Hello, my name is Diane. Today I want to talk about all of the series I finished reading in 2023. These are specifically series that are fully published, and I've read all of the installments in them. I am primarily a fantasy reader, and fellow fantasy readers will know it's very easy to be in the middle of a lot of series because a lot of books are part of a series in the fantasy genre. And recently I've worked very hard to get through and complete or catch up on all of the series that I was reading. I only really have a few that I still need to catch up on, and then the rest I'm waiting for the next installment to be published, which is out of my control. But these are all ones that are finished being published. All of the books in the series are out, and I've read all of them. I don't have too many because I caught up with a lot of series last year, but I did enjoy all of these, so I'm excited to talk about them. Hopefully some of them will appeal to you as well. First up, I have Sheets by Brenna Thumler. This includes Sheets, Delicates, and Lights. This is a graphic novel series following a young girl who has lost her mother, and she is basically running her family's business. They own a laundromat, and there is a ghost of a young boy who is recently deceased and is learning to be a ghost and live his ghost existence, and he finds himself in the laundromat and unintentionally causes some problems for her. They wind up becoming friends and helping each other through the things that they're dealing with, and eventually meet this girl Eliza who has her own struggles, and they all become friends and work together to cope with whatever is going on in their individual lives. It's a very sweet story. They deal with some sadder topics of bullying and grief and things like that, but it's written for a younger audience, so it's done in a very approachable way. And I just thought this was such a sweet series. I loved the bond between the characters and seeing them figure out how to deal with things they were dealing with. I've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go on too much about it, but I absolutely adore this series. I definitely recommend it. Next, I have Winternight by Catherine Arden. This is The Bear and the Nightingale, The Girl in the Tower, and The Winter of the Witch. I had heard really good things about this, and I honestly wasn't expecting very much going into it. I didn't have high hopes that I was going to like this as much as I had heard everyone else liked it, and I was pleasantly surprised when I read it and found that I was wrong. I loved this series. I loved the first book and meeting our main character. The story has a very fairy tale feel, and it mixes folklore with actual history, and I think that's really interesting take on those things. Some of the events that are happening are things that really happened, and some of the folklore is borrowed. But the way that they are blended together and seeing our main character and her family, she's growing up and discovering this magic and all of these things around her. As her world is changing, her family is changing and growing up also. And I just think it's such a beautifully written story. It feels very magical. Very good winter read if you're also entering winter. I think this is a great time of year to read the series if you haven't already. Then I have Jurassic Park, which is, of course, Jurassic Park and The Lost World by Michael Crichton. Jurassic Park is my favorite movie. I watch it if I'm just scrolling through TV because I need something on for background noise. I like having background noise when I'm doing things. And I see that one of the Jurassic Park movies is on, I'll just put it on. It doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. I enjoy it every time. So I was honestly a little nervous to read these books because I knew I loved the adaptation so much. I was really hoping that I would like the source material as much. And I was really afraid that I was going to be disappointed by the book. But again, I was wrong. There was really no reason for me to put off reading these for so long because I loved both of them. There are some differences between the books and the movies, but I really enjoyed seeing that. I think it's really interesting how something that is put on a screen needs to be changed because things that we do in books to tell a story don't always translate that well on a screen because you're not getting the full narration, you're not hearing all of the characters' thoughts. So I thought it was really cool to see what Michael Crichton wrote versus what was actually put together for the film because it's pretty true to the story, but there are some minor changes that made sense going from book to screen. And I really enjoyed both of them. I think the books have a bit more of a horror feel to them than the movies, which feel a little more action to me. I don't know enough about movies and movie subgenres to know if that's accurate. Maybe it is a horror film. But I think they had a very similar but slightly different tone to them. And I'm really glad I finally read these. I'm happy to say that I love both the book and the film for both of these. Then I have Garlic by Brie Paulson. This is Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch. This is another graphic novel series written for younger readers, but can be enjoyed by anyone. I am not a young reader, and I loved these. I think they're adorable. In Garlic and the Vampire, we find that there is a witch who has a garden and she needed some help, so she magicked some of her vegetables to give them arms and legs, and they help her out in the garden, and we follow Garlic, of course. And she is very shy, very meek. She's very unsure of herself and her abilities. But in both of these stories, her friends need her to do something that to her is extremely scary. First, when she has to go and face the vampire that has moved in nearby to figure out if he's dangerous, and if so, to find a way to get rid of him. And then in Garlic and the Witch, she has to go on a long journey to a magical market to get a special ingredient to help one of her friends. And I just think it's really sweet seeing her overcome these seemingly big obstacles that she's very intimidated by with the encouragement of her friends. And it's just a very charming, silly story. I mean, it's a bulb of garlic going on an adventure. On a different note, I have Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence. This is Red Sister, Gray Sister, and Holy Sister. This follows our main character, Nona, who is an orphan, and she is sentenced to be hanged, and on that day she is saved by the abbess from the local convent, who takes her in and trains her. The convent trains their girls to fight and do magic. They're not just practicing religion, they're learning a lot of combat skills as well. And we see her grow up over these 3 books and face a lot of dangerous situations. I loved the character of Nona. I loved all of the women around her. And I just liked seeing her journey as she grew up and fulfilled whatever it was she was meant to do. I also finished Broken Empire by Mark Lawrence, which includes Prince of Thorns, King of Thorns, and Emperor of Thorns, as well as the main character who is a prince who has left his kingdom and he now runs a gang. Basically, they are terrible people, they do terrible things. It's a very dark feeling book, even though I don't think anything particularly gruesome happens on page. But the tone of the way that it's written feels very dark and very uncomfortable. But I thought it was really interesting to see him go back to his kingdom and reclaim the throne as the heir from his father, and the things he has to do to get it back, and build his power after that because he wants to be more powerful. He obviously wants to work his way up to emperor based on the titles. I didn't like this quite as much as the Book of the Ancestor, mostly because I connected with the main character in that one more than in this story. But I did really enjoy this. I think the world's really weird and interesting. I think Mark Lawrence's world building, he does some very unique things. And I think it's really cool and always surprising for me to see what he throws into his worlds and how he builds them up as the story progresses and our characters grow. I also finished The First Law by Joe Abercrombie, which includes the blade itself, Before They Are Hanged, and The Last Argument of Kings. I hear so many good things about Joe Abercrombie. I feel like everyone loves his writing, and particularly his writing within this world. I know there is, I think, another trilogy and a few standalones within this world, or something like that. But everybody talks so highly about this, and I had read one other series from him before, so I was very eager to read this. And while I did enjoy it, I don't think I loved it as much as everyone else seems to, but I do really like Joe Abercrombie's writing. I think his character work is phenomenal. His worlds are really interesting and expansive, and there's always so much going on within the story, and it all comes together by the final book in the series. So he has all of these individual threads at the beginning with the many main characters, and then they all start interacting and meeting one another and forming a group and splitting off and doing whatever. There's just a lot going on, but it all feels very cohesive and it's easy to follow each one. And then by the end of it, there's something that brings everything together and ties up all the loose ends. without it being a happy ending for everyone also. We don't necessarily get the best for all of our characters by the end of it, but I really like that. I don't think it's realistic, especially when you have a lot of characters like this and they're on opposing sides, for all of them to have happy, fulfilling endings. Some of them are gonna get something bad or just not get what they wanted. So I really like that. I may read more in this world eventually. While I don't think this is going to be a new favorite series of mine, I definitely enjoyed it. I definitely like Joe Abercrombie's writing. And finally, another graphic novel series aimed at younger readers, The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. This includes the Tea Dragon Society, the Tea Dragon Festival, and the Tea Dragon Tapestry. And it follows the members of the Tea Dragon Society. There are a few older members who already know the art of caring for tea dragons, and there are a few younger members that are learning that art. The tea dragons are absolutely adorable. I think that's pretty much why I like this series, is I just like the tea dragons. They're little tiny dragons, and each one produces a specific type of tea, and they bond with someone who, if they're well cared for, can harvest that tea. And it is a dying art at the beginning of this story, and they are trying to pass it down to a younger generation to keep it going. And throughout the series, we see the Tea Dragon Society as it is now, forming and building up and passing down that art. Some of the younger members are still figuring out what they want to do with their life. They're struggling with the art of tea dragon care. We learn a bit about how the society came together, the older generation. It's just a very cute story. The Tea Dragons, absolutely adorable. The art I really enjoy. I know art can be real hit or miss for everyone in a graphic novel, but I really like the art. I think it definitely suits the story that's being told, the art style. If you want some dragons, but you're not really feeling any action. So those are all 8 series that I finished reading this year. Really enjoyed all of them. I'm glad I read them. They're all pretty different from one another, but I think they're all a lot of fun. Let me know any series that you finished this year, if you have a favorite that you're glad you finally got to read. I'd love to hear about that. Otherwise, that's all for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.